All right, how's it going? So, I'm going to go through the steps on how I figured out the Rubik's Cube. I've been getting asked quite a few times, so I figured I'll make a video on how I did this. It all started back in high school, probably 2005, 2004, even, maybe even a little before that. I picked one up and was playing with, and it was a Rubik's brand. So, for the longest time, I would spend, I had a long, hour-long bus ride one way to school. So I would just sit for months straight trying to figure it out. And I think it took me around 4 to 5 months to figure out how to do it. It took me about an hour, I would say, my first scramble to finish solved. So a lot of the process was, I think, the biggest factor that helped me move, because for a while I would just get one side, and after a little bit I was even able to get the edges of that one side. That took me maybe about a week to figure out on my own. And in high school there was one boy who knew how to solve the cube, so he was beneficial. He didn't show me how, but if I ever wanted the cube in a solved state, I would give it to him. After a couple minutes, he'd hand it back and I would have it in a solved state. And that helped me because I was able to do certain moves like this, where I would just repeat and see what effects they would have. So I that kind of helped me come up with patterns that I knew I could do that would only affect like these four pieces. Another thing that helped was I figured out how to take the cube apart. Now, it was an old Rubik's brand, so I'd have to turn it 45 degrees like this and stick a flathead screwdriver and really struggle to pop a cube out. And I was able to see that the Rubik's Cube was made of 8 corners, which I kind of knew, but I understood like this white sticker, blue, and red were always going to be there. So it kind of helped me mentally grasp that there's an edge piece, a center, and a corner, and kind of how the puzzle worked, how they all moved around each other. That really helped. So that was also fortunate because if I was scrambled and I wanted it solved, I could just take the cube apart and put it back together solved. So a lot of other things I would do in a solved state is try to figure out other patterns where it would only affect certain ones. So one of them was flipping edges. So I would do patterns like this, just over and over, and then I was go two and then up, like that. And I realized, oh, I'm only affecting, I can flop edges. And that comes in later because the way I would solve it is I would do corners and then edges. So I would try to figure out different patterns I could, or moves I could do that would only affect what I wanted. And it was a lot easier to see it when the cube was in a solved state. So I would have it solved, and then I would be like, all right, I'm going to try repeating moves, to see what happens after so many. A lot, like one of the ones I figured out, I started to learn shortcuts. It's kind of stupid, but I would do moves like this where I would just rotate each side of a face twice, and I would keep going until I recognized a pattern. Might not really show up because this one was messed up. So let's go back. This is an old Rubik's Cube I had back. I think this one was from my first competition in 2008. So it's not good, but it's got the CubeSmith tile stickers, which back then I thought were the greatest thing because I got sick and tired of buying Rubik's brand stickers because they were expensive and they would just start to peel over time and the color just wouldn't be there. So the tiles were great. And now, of course, nowadays the plastic itself is the color, so you don't even have to deal with stickers. So another pattern I figured out. Sorry, I'm going to get it in a solved state. I'm not fast at solving. So another pattern I would do is like I would do turns on each side twice to see what would happen when the cube returns to normal on all of these. Oh, I can swap these four. And then I would try patterns where, you know, I was like, oh, I can go a little quicker now. There's a shortcut. If I just do this, that's much quicker than turning each side 2 times. So little things like that. But one of the other steps I would try to figure out is for the edges, I use 2 algorithms, I guess you call it, where I flip 2 edges, and the other one is where I rotate 3. That was the pivotal one that once I figured that out, I was able to solve the cube. So to swap 3, I would go up twice and then back down and twice, and it moves the 3 around without affecting anything else. So if I wanted to move, you know, like these 3 needed rotated, I would bring this one to here, do the rotation, and then when I bring it back, I just rotated those 3. So that was pivotal. I realized, you know, I can move these blocks where I want to where I only, and then I'll do this step where I only affect those 3. And then if I reverse, that's how I can move just the 3 I want. Same with the edge flipping. So like sometimes at the end of the cube, I would go to swap an edge and I'd be like, oh, let me put it back where it should be. So like if I'd come, I'd be like, okay, so these 2 edges are backwards. The pattern I do flips these 3, and I would never have these across, but I was like, if I just move it up to where they're across and I do that step where it flips them, then I realized I can just undo it and it would fix it. There was one other thing I figured out where it flipped a lot of the edges, but I never really had a use for it. Because I would just do things where I'll hold it and, you know, if I keep doing this over and over, it will come back, but it never really had any pattern. Although when I did it with the big one and the little, then it did. So if I go like this, how did I do it? I never really, yeah, so I do that and that. Like you turn the middle and the outers, I realize, oh, it flips all the edges on the top and bottom, but it doesn't do the sides. But I never had it where I would need, you know, 8 edges flipped. Just because as I got a little quicker, I would do corners then edges. But I realized I can do one face and then bottom corners, and then I would only have like the middle edges and the bottom edges. So this pattern never really, although I was like, oh, it's neat, I can do that, it doesn't really, I never had a use for it. There was a couple other ones I would tinker with, you know, like obviously I'd try to see like what different things you can do, but there were only 2 I really used. So I'll walk through my process. Originally, I would, after like a week or so, I was able to get one side with the edges. So I kind of went from there. So, yeah, I can get. So like this is after a week of playing with it, I could get this, and I was like, okay, that's pretty good. And then I was like, well, I think it'll be best to do the corners than the edges, just because I didn't know how else to go about it. And originally I would just do only corners, and then I would, here, let me get the corners. So Yeah. So like it would be mixed up. I would do the corners, and then I was like, well, if I'm, having to do moves like this to put my edges in, I realized I was quicker if I just do the face, and the steps I do to get the corners didn't really affect this first face anyway. So I would do the one side with its edges first. That I was able to do with no issue. So I would get it like this, but obviously, let me re-scramble because the corners were done. So I would get my one side. Nowadays I use kind of a C-FOP, so I'm trying not to do middle layer as well, because back when I first figured it out, I didn't even consider it. So I would get this face, and now I'd be like, I got to do my corners. I got pretty lucky here where these two are good. Normally I would have a case where two are good, but they wouldn't be oriented. So all I would really try to do, like, I'll just kind of scramble them a little more. So I would find my red, blue, and yellow corner, and I'd put it kind of adjacent to this red, blue, and white. And I got, okay, they're all in the right spot. So I kind of got lucky there. So yeah, I would normally match like that. Oh, and this one matches. I'd be like, okay, cool. But these two need to be swapped this way. So normally what I would do is I would try to get them in the right spot. Then I would flip them. So I would put the two that need swapped, like these two need to go like this, and I would put them on my right hand. And this one that's good, I'd have on the left hand. So whenever I wanted to swap two, I would do this step where I'd go this face down, then this one down, and back and back. And I would normally be like, okay, I got to put that in, but I would put it in like this. And then I realized one turn that way and it flips them. So that was the moves I did to swap two corners. Now I need to orient them. So what I would do, there was a step I would do where I would just do, it rotates 3, I believe, or how do I say, like it orients 3 corners. It doesn't move them around. It just kind of flips the 3. And I would do it, the step. It only turns 2 sides. So I would bring the white over, down, bring it back, down, over, twice, and back. And so I'd bring it back to where they go and I'd be like, okay, so my goal is I'm really looking for 3 that the yellow is not facing up. If I find one where the yellow is up, that's the one where I keep it at the bottom of the face I would turn. So I'm just kind of guessing, doing that pattern over and over until I see one where it's just one yellow facing up. Sometimes I'd have none, and I would just do the pattern hoping I'd get lucky. So I would do it again. Okay, there's 2. Try it one more time. None. So this is when I'd rotate and try it again. There's 2. Let's try it one more time. None. Another 2. We'll go again. None. Try turning it twice. Let's try it again. There. So I got one that's good. So they're all still in the right position, but this is the only one. So when I get it like this is where I discover I can flip these 3. Sometimes I'd have to do the step twice, but I knew once I found it in this position, I'd be good. So I put it kind of at the bottom and I turn the face above it, and I do that same step again, and then they're all good. So now my corners are done. So when I got this, I was pretty thrilled. But then the hard part was the edges. The corners actually weren't too bad because it was just that 1 or 2 set of moves I figured out to orient and move them around. So now that I had the corners done, I was like, well, I just got to get the rest of the edges. So what I tried doing was getting the yellow edges on the yellow face, because I was like, I got the white done, now I'll do the yellow. And so I have 2 in there, and there's 2 here. So what I would do is I would do my 3-edge swap. So I'd be like, I want to put this edge here. So if I'm doing a 3-edge swap, it's going to go here. So I want it to go here. So I'll do the moves where I just turn that one there where I want to put it, and then I do the 3-edge swap like that. And then I'd be like, I got to bring these back. And that's how I put it there. And then there's one more yellow. So it's going to swap to here. So I'll put that edge there. I'll do my 3-edge swap. And then I got all my yellows up here. So now, sometimes I would try to solve the middles before, or the yellows. It didn't really matter. I kind of would eyeball it. So I'd swap these 3 like that. There were also other times where I knew, well, I'll show it I'll just show it quick here. Let me solve this. Oh, this cube turns terribly. But this was my high quality speed cube back in the day. I guess it's not too bad, but on today's standards, it's awful. But this is all we really had back then. So one of the pattern, what was I showing? Oh yeah, I would, for the middle row, I guess you could say, I would do patterns like this. So like I could swap kind of 4 around, but the main ones I used was that 3 swap. That one I found it was just a little easier and quicker. So now that those, all I have left is these 4 corners, and I would flip the edges. So I did that step where I would flip those. And then all that's left is these 3. Sometimes I'd have 4. I'll show what I'll do for that. But for these 3, I would just put them in a spot where I rotate the 3 like that. Then I do my 3-step rotation. If it didn't work, I do it one more time. And then that would solve it. So sometimes there'd be 4 not in the right spot. I don't know the different permutations for C FOP. So yeah, I would just rotate 3, and it would pretty much do the same thing. Then fixes it one more time. Yep, like that. And then there were times I did know this one though. I did figure out this one, but I never. It was so rare I would get it like this that I didn't even bother with it. And the solution I used for it was I would do this, and then I'd match those up and do the same thing. But that's how I did it. But that was rare. It never really came up. I would always just do the 3-edge swap. And hopefully this kind of explains how I went about figuring it out. But then obviously, once I was able to do that, I got my time down from like 40 minutes to an hour down to maybe 10 minutes, then to 5. And I thought that was really good, especially with the Rubiks brand cube. Then in freshman year and stuff, I did get a little quicker. We got a new cube, and yeah, kind of a little more competitive with some other kids in school. But that's where, we learn CFOP method. I currently don't really know CFOP. Like F2L, I don't really do. I just do one face. I put in the like the moves where like you want it to go there. I kind of do it like that. And then I do last layer. I just make yellow and then the edges. But I don't know all the algorithms, so I do a yellow cross and then the corners. And then I know some of the last layer, but like this one I know. But if I don't, I'll do corners and then the edge rotations. And sometimes even like the edge rotations. This one I know, but some of them I have to do it twice. Like this one, like I know there's an algorithm just to do it quick, but I have to do that and then I got to do it one more time. So I'm a little better with the CFOP method, but yeah, that's a little off topic. But that's kind of how I did it. So hopefully this video you found interesting. I still don't know how to read algorithms, so maybe one day I'll learn that and then I can learn better CFOP, but that's for another day. So, all right, have a good one.